Everybody hates Nassau, and I, for one, don't understand it. I'm Melissa, a university professor who loves to cruise and who loves to talk ship. And in this episode of the Cruise Pod, we're going to talk about one of my personal favorite ports that everybody seems to despise, which is Nassau. So let's get right into it. First, let's talk about Nassau then versus Nassau now. Now, if you spend any time talking to experienced cruisers, reading reviews online through places like Cruise Critic or Facebook groups, you've probably heard mixed reviews about Nassau and probably leaning on the side of negative. Some cruisers actively avoid itineraries that call on Nassau, and others, when they are on itineraries that call on Nassau, will even stay on the ship and avoid getting off of it. When you ask them why they hate Nassau so much, generally what you hear is, well, the vendors are so pushy, they're so aggressive, the locals always offer me drugs, it's too crowded, it's not safe. But here's the thing. If you're hearing this stuff from people that have visited Nassau a long time ago, it's pretty different now. Nassau has undergone a massive transformation. In spring of 2023, the port completed a multi-million-dollar renovation, and it completely changed that arrival experience. I visited Nassau many times prior to the renovation, and I visited many times after, and it is a night and day difference. The new Nassau Cruise Port features modern amenities. It's beautiful, it's clean, it's modern, it's colorful. They have the Museum of Junkanoo right there at the terminal. And in my experience, there are no pushy vendors. They have dedicated regulated stalls for vendors where they have their shops and they sell their tchotchkes, and they have a hair braiding pavilion, but there's nobody hassling you. So while the concerns about aggressive vendors, they may have been valid in the past, this new port area is much more regulated and welcoming. Now, I will say, once you exit the official cruise terminal area, there's a gated area. Once you exit it, you will find local vendors, locals trying to earn $1, offering to taxi you here or there, trying to get you to sell things, get your hair braided, whatever it may be. And I just politely say no thank you, avoid eye contact, and keep it moving. I personally don't find the vendors in Nassau to be particularly any more aggressive than they are at any other cruise port. And for those safety concerns, of course, when you're cruising, you always should be aware of your surroundings at any destination. But Nassau is generally very safe for tourists who stick to the main areas. Whenever there's big news reports of crime in Nassau, it's almost always in the over-the-hill area, which is an area that's not anywhere near the tourist areas. It's kind of gang-on-gang local crime, and as long as you're not venturing over there and doing shady things, you're gonna be fine, trust me. I visit Nassau many times a year, including just 3 days ago. Sometimes solo, even by myself or with my young daughter, and never once have I felt unsafe. Now let's talk about the Nassau basics. Nassau is the capital of the Bahamas. It's located on New Providence Island, and it's really cool because it has a rich British colonial history that dates back to the 17th century. It is pretty big as far as Bahamas locations go, and it currently has a population of about 275,000 people. Now, here are some quick tips for your visit that I take from my many visits there. First is that US dollars are widely accepted, so don't worry about trying to do any currency exchange. US dollars are fine. Avoid wearing camouflage clothing. Like a lot of Caribbean ports of call, civilians are not allowed to wear camo. Now, of course, there's going to be someone that chimes in and says, I wore camo clothing in Nassau and nobody said anything to me. Most of the time, no one's probably going to say anything to you. But it would really stink to go through the whole disembarkation process, walk down sometimes a very long pier, depending on where your ship is docked, just to have security or the local police or the tourist police basically stop you and send you back onto the ship to change clothes. So just leave the camo at home. Wear it on the ship, just don't wear it in Nassau. If you visit, try the local delicacy, which is conch. You'll find it prepared various ways, but the fried version is particularly popular. As I mentioned before, stick to the touristic areas. Do not, I repeat, do not go to the over-the-hill area. That's south of downtown. Stay in the touristy areas, even on foot, you're gonna be fine. Another thing to note, many vendors here will negotiate with you, and you'll have better bargaining power with cash versus credit card. And if you're using credit card, always use an actual credit card, preferably one with travel benefits. Do not use your debit card. I personally have never heard of a lot of issues of fraud or people stealing credit card numbers in Nassau, but it can happen. So using a credit card or cash is a smarter move. Another thing to note is there are a lot of attractions that are walkable from the terminal area. And that's what I love about Nassau. And there is a helpful downtown map available at the terminal. And I also have it available on my website, profmelissa.com, along with a free port guide giving you everything you need to know to plan for the perfect visit to Nassau. Now let's talk about getting around and the top things to do in Nassau. But before we dive into activities, let's talk about how to get there. While most of the attractions, as I mentioned, are walkable from the port, there are several options if you want to get out to those further flung destinations. Nassau has what are called jitneys. These are local buses, and they operate frequently between downtown and Cable Beach, which is a little bit of a further beach, and they run about $1.50 per person, so they're super cheap. But a lot of tourists don't feel comfortable taking public transportation. So another option are taxis. Taxis typically range from about $15 to $20 each way for common routes, like from the cruise port over to Paradise Island, which is where Cabbage Beach and Atlantis are. And note that prices are generally negotiated up front and they don't use meters. They also often take cash only, but again, US currency is generally fine. Another unique way to get around are water taxis. These offer those quick 10-minute rides between Nassau, which remember is an island, and Paradise Island, which is a nearby island, for about $6 per person, and they depart about every 30 minutes. And my preferred way to explore here and a few other ports of call are with a private driver. I got my guy in Nassau. He's amazing. His name is Clement. I'll drop his info below. And it's really a great deal if you've got a group of people, 3, 4, 5 people that are sharing the cost with you. When you hire out a driver like Clement, he'll roll up in his beautiful new Lincoln town car, wearing his suit, and he will take you wherever you want to go. You can keep your stuff securely stowed in his car while you go out to the beach or explore or whatever. And he is a local, so he knows all the local traditions and can fill you in on the local culture. Highly recommend the private driver route. Now, regardless of how you choose to get around, there's a lot of things to do here in Nassau. One of my favorites is the Queen's Staircase. This is a must-see. It's a 66-step landmark that was carved by slaves in the 18th century. So it has a sad history, but an important one. And it leads to Fort Fincastle. Now, Fort Fincastle, there's not much to see or do there. It's like a castle, and there's a little straw market there. But Queen's Staircase is really cool because you can actually go up and down it, and you almost feel like you're in the set of a tropical movie or something. It's a little more than half a mile from port, so when you exit the terminal area, get past the pushy vendors, hang a left, you'll be there within a reasonably short walk. I also like Queen's Staircase in Fort Fincastle because it is free to visit. There's no cost, and it really offers great Insta-worthy photo ops. Now, it is important to note there is generally a local person here who will stand at the top of Queen's Staircase and offer you a little quick oral history of the staircase. He's usually doing this for tips. You do not have to tip, it's optional. I personally enjoy the history, so even though I know it, I'll generally sit there and listen, and I appreciate that, and I'll usually tip the man, usually like $5. Also, while you're in the area, en route to Queen's Staircase is one of my Nassau favorites, the Bahamas Rum Cake Factory. That's just about half a mile from port, again, on the way to Queen's Staircase. Now, Bahamas rum cakes are a thing, but there's a lot of commercial brands that you can find in your local grocery store. But unlike those, these are truly authentic Bahamian rum cakes, and they are fire. They're made fresh on site by a local business. I know the owner, Simon. He's amazing. You gotta stop by. Now, it can be intimidating because when you roll up, you'll generally find a line out the door because it is a popular thing. They offer delicious free samples, but don't let that intimidate you because Simon keeps it moving and you'll be in and out really fast. And because of the way they package those rum cakes, you can take them home, you can take them back on the ship with you, and as long as you keep them enclosed and you don't open them up, you won't have any issue at all. Another must-see attraction is John Watling's Distillery. It's a little further away, but still under a mile from the cruise port, just in the other direction. And even if you're not a drinker, I'm not a drinker, I'm not interested in rum tastings, but this was really, really cool. At Watling's Distillery, they offer free short guided tours, and it's a beautiful estate. It's small, but it's beautiful. And it even is kid-friendly, so you can bring kids along, just obviously don't give them rum. But it's really cool for them to see too, because you can learn a little bit about the business of it, which I like. You can learn about the distilling process and how they make rum. And adults over 21 get to sample the handcrafted Bahamian rums. I did drink the slushy rum, and it was actually really, really good. And at the end of your tour, there's beautiful gardens and even a dedicated tasting room. So it costs you nothing, although I do recommend tipping your guide. There's someone that will take you around on that free short guided tour. And when I say short, it's short, like under 10 minutes. But it's a nice quick hit, just like Queen's Staircase. Queen's Staircase, it doesn't take long. You don't want to plan a whole visit in Nassau around either of these things. But my recommendation is to leave the terminal area, make a left, get you some rum cake samples and buy some rum cakes, visit Queen's Staircase, head over to Watling's Distillery, and do that little short tour. There's a lot you can do here in a short port of call day. Another option, which is great if you love pirates or you have kids, is the Pirates of Nassau Museum. This is really close. It's about 0.3 miles from the cruise terminal area. And it provides an interactive journey into Nassau's pirate history. They have a life-size pirate ship replica. They have information about Blackbeard and the city's history as a pirate haven during the 18th century. It's not free, but it's pretty affordable. And another unique stop is Grey Cliff, a little bit less than half a mile from the cruise terminal area. This is actually a historic hotel and kind of restaurant area, so it's like the same owners, and they'll offer tours of their cigar and chocolate factories, and they also have one of the largest wine cellars in the world. So you can actually stop here and spend no or little money. There's also an umbrella alley kind of thing that makes for some great photos. And if you want to taste authentic local food and you like fish, head to the Fish Fry at Arawak Key. It's about 1.5 miles from the cruise terminal area. It's on the way to Cable Beach, so if you want to head that way, it's a great place to stop. It's a collection of colorful, locally owned restaurants. And when I say local, this is actually where the locals go to eat. They have restaurants and stalls. It is the freshest conch you'll find. I'm not a seafood person, but even I had to try it. And the place I stopped was really cool because you literally see them harvesting the conch out of the water right there. It is the freshest of the fresh. And they also, of course, offer other Bahamian specialties like fried fish and grilled lobster. If visiting Atlantis is on your bucket list, as it was for me for a long time, you can easily take a taxi over to Paradise Island. Now, I will tell you, personally, I think Atlantis is a little overrated. Now, if you love water slides, I'm talking water slide enthusiast, and my kid is. She loves water slides, so I will always take her to Atlantis because she gets her money's worth. But unless you're a real water slide enthusiast, my recommendation is to skip this one. But that's in terms of buying a pass. What's great is you can actually get a little taste of Atlantis at no cost. Now, back in the day, when I say back in the day, like a couple years ago, they would actually let you wander around inside and outside the property, and they have these like huge aquariums and Chihuly glass blown, light fixtures. You can't do that anymore. It's pretty limited now where visitors can go, but there are still things that you can do in Atlantis for free. So it's, I think, worth it taking a taxi over to Paradise Island. It's not expensive to get over there. Don't try to walk it, but take a taxi and then explore the property. You'll get to see those kind of Chihuly exhibits. You'll get to play the casino. You can see the casino. It's really cool. And there is a really cool marina that is publicly available. It's a little overpriced, but they have shops and coffee shops and restaurants and stuff like that. So there are some things you can do in the marina, and you can explore part of Atlantis inside, but if nothing else, you can say, hey, I've been to Atlantis, and it was free. Now, a big thing to do in Nassau is a beach day. Nassau is home to some stunning beaches. I'm talking the whitest of the white soft sand, the most unreal turquoise water, but there are some important things that you should know when you're planning your beach day. So I want to tell you the important things about the main public beaches. Now, the one all the cruisers go to, and in my opinion, why I think Nassau unfairly gets a bad rap, is Junkanoo Beach. Now, Junkanoo Beach is great. The water's gorgeous, the sand is gorgeous, it's walkable from the port, it's less than a mile. You exit the terminal area, make a right, kind of a straight shot past Senior Frogs, it's right there. That's awesome. So it's close, it's free, you don't have to take a taxi, it's awesome. The water's great, but it gets really, really crowded. I'm talking very crowded. Nassau is a big port. It's one of the biggest cruise ports in the world. I mean, you have 6, 7 cruise ships dock simultaneously. Everybody goes to Junkanoo Beach. It's really overcrowded. The vendors here do tend to be quite aggressive, trying to rent you a beach chair and umbrella. You will be offered illicit drugs 9 times out of 10, and they're not always the nicest. And that overcrowdedness drives me crazy. And you also have people with their Bluetooth speakers. It's just chaotic and loud. I hate it. I love the water, I hate the overcrowdedness. And what happens is a lot of cruisers experience this and they throw their hands up and they say, I hate Nassau, it's gross, ew. I never want to go back. I have a recommendation though. You can enjoy Junkanoo Beach, but in a much more luxurious way. And I'll tell you about that in the next segment. But first, I want to tell you about the other public beaches. Now, if you want to avoid that big crowd, you can head a little further from Junkanoo Beach, and there's Western Esplanade Beach. This is a very similar experience to Junkanoo, but it's a bit quieter, but you got to walk a bit further and kind of get away from the people. Now, the cool thing about both these beaches is they're harbor side, so the waves are much more gentle. This is important because another popular option, which I love that's beautiful, is Cabbage Beach. And Cabbage Beach has some very aggressive waves. So let's talk about Cabbage Beach. This is located over on Paradise Island. So if you do decide to taxi over, you want to see Atlantis, but you want to do a beach experience for free, you can visit Cabbage Beach. It is gorgeous, but I've tried to go several times, and literally every single time I've gone, the waves have been super scary aggressive. And so aggressive that basically there's no one in the water. So it's not always the best option because it's just basically raw ocean. There's nothing kind of protecting or breaking the winds or anything like that. But if you don't care to cavort in the water and you just want to lay in the sand, you can do that, but it does generally tend to be windy. There are vendors here too that will offer to sell you illicit substances, rent you a chair and umbrella, but Cabbage Beach, in my experience, has always been a no-go because of the daggone aggressive waves. Now, another great option, one that I recently tried for the first time, I mentioned I just got back from Nassau, is Cable Beach. Now, this one's further. It's about 5 miles from the port, and it's going to take a taxi to get there, but it's worth it because it's on the ocean side, so there are gentler waves than you're going to get at Cabbage Beach. It's also en route, as I mentioned, to that fish fry, so you can always pop in, combine that activity, get you some fresh fish, and then have a nice beach day. Cabbage Beach, because it's further out, does tend to be less crowded too, which I think is a huge added bonus for that. Now, regardless of which public beach you decide to visit, here are some important tips. One is to note they can get very crowded, especially those like Junkanoo that are closest to the port. Another is that the vendors can be aggressive. For example, every time I go to Cabbage Beach, the minute you start walking up this little hill to kind of get to the beach, there's going to be vendors, I'll rent you a chair, I'll sell you a drink and a pineapple, I'll sell you drugs. I mean, just tell them no, thank you, keep it moving, but that can be an annoyance. If you do want to rent an umbrella and chairs from locals, it's going to cost you about $15 to $25, and always negotiate and always bring cash. And I kind of joke about this, but I am serious. Now, this never happens, thankfully, when I'm traveling with my kids, but literally 100% of the time that I visited any beach in Nassau without kids, I have been offered drugs. So just politely decline, unless that's your thing. But I don't recommend taking that risk in a foreign country. And finally, my biggest tip, which will segue nicely into our next section, is to consider a resort day pass. The public beaches are great, but like I said, they get really crowded. And by the time you account for umbrella and chair rental and all of that, it is going to end up costing you money anyway. So what I always recommend to cruisers that visit Nassau, and what I do almost every single time, is I book a resort day pass. Now let's talk about resort day passes. In my opinion, your best beach option. There are several resorts in Nassau that offer day passes that'll give you access to private beachfront experience and additional amenities. So let's break down each option. But before we do, I want to clarify, this is very different than Cozumel. Cozumel is known for their all-inclusive beach clubs. They're pretty cheap, they're all-inclusive, food, alcohol, everything else. Nassau, it's a different animal. It's much more expensive with a couple of conditions. They're not all-inclusive and they're going to be more expensive. My current personal favorite is the British Colonial. Why? Because it is the most affordable, although they keep jacking up the price, so they're kind of testing me. But for now, they are still the most affordable option, and it's the closest to port. So when you exit the terminal area, make a right. It's not very far. You can get there easily without having to take a taxi, assuming you don't have mobility issues. British Colonial was closed for a long time, but they recently reopened with a complete renovation. And it is a really cool way to experience Junkanoo Beach without the smell of ganja, people offering to sell you drugs, loud conflicting Bluetooth songs, aggressive vendors. It's a whole different experience. If you book a day pass here, you'll get access to their pool, private Junkanoo access. You can see the cruise ships right there. It's very close to port. And you get free use of towels, loungers, and watercraft like kayaks. I personally hate dragging cruise ship towels around. They're heavy, they're bulky, they're cumbersome. So that alone is a big benefit for me. The water here is unbelievably clear. When you're in the water, you're not going to be having people all over you like you are in the public part of Junkanoo Beach. And for me, it is definitely worth the cost of a day pass to have access to that private beachfront experience, all of the amenities, the lounger, the umbrella, the towels. But again, it's not all inclusive, and the food and beverages here and at the other resorts tend to be overpriced. So I always recommend eating before and after, not when you're actually at the resort. Another favorite that I really like is Margaritaville. It's right next to British Colonial, just a little bit further from the cruise terminal area. And the cool thing about Margaritaville is it provides a more active experience. When I'm cruising to Nassau with my kids, I always will do Margaritaville over British Colonial because they love the water slides and the high jump they have at Margaritaville. British Colonial, they have some pools, the beachfront, some kayaks, but it's pretty chill. Margaritaville is more action. If you book a pass with Margaritaville, you get that private beach access. It also fronts Junkanoo, and this is actually right by the public part. And the guards there do a pretty good job of making sure that people have the wristband and kind of keeping the public part away. And you will see the night and day difference of the private experience versus the public experience. Now, as I mentioned, what I love about Margaritaville is they have water slides. They have a little small lazy river that I personally love. My kiddo loves the high jump. They also have a surf simulator, and like British Colonial, they provide towels and kayaks as well. So it's a little more expensive than British Colonial, but you get a lot more amenities. So if you like those things, it's a great choice. Another great option is Baha Mar. Baha Mar is pretty comparable to Atlantis. It's a little further from the cruise terminal area. It is going to require a taxi ride, and it is a bit pricey, but cheaper than Atlantis generally. But in this case, you get what you pay for. This is really kind of the more luxury experience. A day pass for Baha Mar includes access to their luxury amenities, including their expansive beachfront water park, Baha Bay. So again, if you love water parks, this is big, huge, fancy water park, pretty similar to Atlantis. They have water slides, a lazy river, and pools. And here you'll get private access to Cable Beach. And like the other resorts, you'll get access to loungers and umbrellas and towels. Riu Palace, this is a unique one because it's Nassau's rare all-inclusive. Now, I recently stopped by a few days ago on my most recent visit. The property itself could use some work, use some facelift. It's a little dated. But if you want to be away from kids, splashing, being loud, you want an all-inclusive experience, Riu is your place. A day pass for Riu gets you access to their infinity pool, private access to Cabbage Beach, and premium food and drinks, along with the use of towels and kayaks. So this is the spot if you want a relaxing, child-free beach day with everything included. And of course, the big one, Atlantis. I already mentioned, not the biggest fan of Atlantis just because it's so ungodly expensive, but they do offer various day pass options that give you access to their famous Aquaventure water park and private access to Cabbage Beach. This is generally the most expensive option in Nassau, but they are the best of the best when it comes to water slides. Baha Mar, close second. This is located over on Paradise Island, so you'll have to factor in the taxi cost to get yourself over there. So that's your complete guide to Nassau, but I want to know from you, what do you think about Nassau? Are you like me and you love it? Are you about it? Or are you the I'm going to stay on the ship, screw Nassau type of mentality? And if you do get off the ship and you do like Nassau, what's your favorite thing to do there? Drop a comment below. And while you're at it, don't forget to like and subscribe and visit my website, profmelissa.com. I have free port guides, including for Nassau, and all kinds of other cruise information. So until next time, happy cruising.